At our recent staff development training where we worked with VoiceOver and the Rotor, some of you said you wish you had a recording of the session so you could review and practice what we learned. I'm making a screen recording. You'll be able to see my screen. You'll be able to hear VoiceOver, and you won't be able to see my hand, but I'll describe the gestures that I'm using to interact with VoiceOver. If you're going to follow along with your own device, you'll have to enable VoiceOver. Remember, you may have a shortcut key set for this, so you could enable it that way. You could use Siri and say, turn on VoiceOver, or you can go to the settings, to accessibility, and under vision is VoiceOver. You can turn it on there. To activate the rotor, we talked about a couple different ways. The first way and most common way is to take your thumb and forefinger, and on the screen you rotate your hand or those fingers as though you're turning a knob. You can turn left counterclockwise or right clockwise. Either way, each time you rotate your fingers in that turning the knob gesture, it will go to the next item on the rotor. I know the order that my items are on my rotor, and if I know I'm closer to turn to the right, I'll do that. If I'm closer to go to the left, I'll do that. But if you're not sure, if you just keep turning, you'll eventually cycle through all the options till you get to what you need. Another way to access the rotor, if someone's having difficulty with that twisting motion or they just prefer to do it this way, if you put one finger on the screen and hold it on the screen, then you can take a finger on your other hand and make a circle around that finger on the screen, and that will activate the rotor as well. You could also put one finger on the right side of your screen and another finger on the left side, and then move at the same time, move them both toward the center of the screen, and that will work the rotor. It's kind of like you're doing a wide pinch together. One of the first things we covered was adjusting the speaking rate. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the rotor, and I'm going to use the thumb and forefinger turning the knob technique. So I'm going to go ahead and twist my fingers, and we're listening for it to say speaking rate, and it will give us a percentage that it's currently set to.
Words.
It says words.
Speaking rate, 95%.
Speaking rate, 95%. If I want to increase the rate, I would swipe up with one finger. I'll go ahead and do that right now. I'm swiping up with one finger.
100%.
It says 100%. I can't go any faster than that, so if I swipe up again,
100%.
it just says 100%. If I want to slow it down, I swipe with one finger down.
95%.
95%.
90%.
90%.
85%.
85%.
80%.
80. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to put it at 70.
75%. 70%.
If you're not used to listening to VoiceOver, this is probably an easier rate for you to be able to understand it. So I'll go ahead and leave it at 70%. You don't have to turn off the rotor, so to speak. You can just continue to work with your device. But then if you need to activate something on the rotor again, you'll have to do that twisting with your fingers. I'm going to go ahead and open my home page.
Selected. Screen recording button. Messages.
All right, so here I am on my home screen, and your home screen likely looks different from mine. Similarly, I didn't mention this earlier, but your rotor might be in a different order than mine. You might have things on your rotor that I don't have, and vice versa. That has to do with when those options were added to the rotor, and you can also change the order in which they appear on the rotor. So we may have rotors that are different. If you remember, we went to settings, and then we went to accessibility, Then we went to VoiceOver, and way down on that VoiceOver screen, we had an option that was called Rotor. Underneath that, there's another one that's called Rotor Action, but what you want is Rotor. And in there, you can put a checkbox for each of the items that you want to be included on your rotor. And you may remember in the training, we added text selection, and that is something I'm going to review in this. So before we go any farther, you might want to make sure text selection is part of your rotor, because we'll be covering that in a little bit. You can also reorder the items on the rotor from that same screen. I'm not going to demonstrate that right now, but I'm just letting you know that's in accessibility under the VoiceOver options in Rotor. So here we are on my home screen, and VoiceOver opened this screen and placed my focus on the top left icon, which in my case is messages. And I talked to you about how our students will swipe, and they often just do a swiping gesture from left to right, which will move the focus one element at a time. So if I swipe right here with one finger,
Where and when folder, 2 apps,
we go to my next icon. We're moving from left to right, going across the top row. If I swipe again,
weather,
then that's the weather is my third one. I'm going to swipe again to the right.
translation folder, 2 apps,
There's my translation folder. I've got a couple apps in there. And then if I swipe again, it's going to go down to the first element on the
clock, 1:48 p.m.
next line, which is my clock. Okay, so I'm able to move through this screen. I could also go back
Translation folder,
by
2
swiping
apps,
to the left.
weather, where and when folder, 2 apps,
And
messages,
now I'm back up at the top left, messages. So this is a way to navigate through apps and elements on a page. What I encourage my students, and I mentioned to you, is to learn the layout of screens that they use commonly. If it's something they're not going to be on often, then the swiping is just a way to kind of get where you're going. But if you know the layout of the screen, you can touch on or close to the item that you need, and you don't have to swipe through as many things to get where you're headed. To explore the screen, we talked about just taking one finger and touching the screen, and it will voice whatever's under your finger without activating it. So for example, if I touch in the center of my screen here, I'm touching with one finger,
music folder, 5 apps,
and it says music folder. If I haven't lifted my finger up, I could pick my finger up and just touch somewhere else. I'll do that.
Safari,
So I just touched on Safari. But if I don't pick my finger up, I can just
Dice World.
slide. Like I'm going to slide up from Safari,
seeing AI,
and it says Seeing AI. If I move to the right,
App Store,
it says App Store. So I can learn where things are on my screen, and things that I use commonly I can locate in places that are maybe a little bit easier to touch. But if I know that layout, then I can get closer and often touch right on certain elements that I need instead of just swiping. So for example, the next thing that I want to talk about and review, I want to use a Google Doc. So right now my focus, I'm going to put my focus back up on messages.
messages,
Okay, that's where it was when it opened this screen. If I want to go to my Google Docs, which I know is in the bottom right part of my doc, at the bottom of my screen, instead of swiping through all these apps to get there, I can just touch down there. So I'm going to put my finger on the bottom right corner of my screen,
doc, Google Apps folder, 14 apps,
and it says Doc Google Apps folder, and it tells me how many apps are in that folder. So that's where I want to go. That's what I'm going to activate. Remember, to activate an element, you double tap with one finger. I'm going to say double tap a lot. If I don't say that it's more than one finger, you're double tapping with one finger. Now, you don't have to stay lined up with this
Google Apps folder, 14 apps,
bottom right corner. Once it's voiced where it is, I can double tap anywhere on the screen to activate that. So sometimes students are really struggling to stay lined up with that little icon. Once it's spoken, then you can just double tap anywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and double tap just in the center of my screen.
Page
All
1 of
right,
2.
that
Adjustable.
opens up my folder where I have all my Google related apps. I think Docs is top right.
Drive. Docs.
Okay, I first hit Drive and then I slid my finger up to Docs. Okay, it voiced it. I could just double tap anywhere. I'm opening Docs.
Docs. Menu. Button. List Gagan.
All
Listings for
right.
I at gmail.com.
And
Open file picker. Button. Snow. Google Doc. List. Create new.
okay.
Button.
So when it opened, it told me that I was in the menu and it said which account I was in. And this is my YouTube channel account. I didn't want to have any personal work stuff that might have student names in it. So that's why I went ahead and used this account instead. So I'm going to go ahead and I know that I have my items sorted as whatever was open most recently. So I'm going to touch about an inch down from the top of the screen because I want to get under the create new and all that. And let's see if I can find that file I want.
App research. Google Docs. Available offline.
Yep,
April
okay,
10th,
so it says
2023.
app
Button.
research. It said that, so now I can tap anywhere. I'm going to double tap to open my file.
App research. App research. Back. Button.
All right, and here I am in my doc. At the top of the screen is all of the standard things that you have at the top of the Google Docs. So you have where you can add collaborators, you could make a copy, you can do formatting options. At the bottom is a screen with the keyboard, and in the center is the actual content for the document, the actual document. I'm going to touch there to activate that and be able to edit it.
Document contents. Double tap to edit. 1. Google Maps recently launched voice
Okay.
guidance with its platform. A. What is it and how does it work? Document contents. Text field. Is editing. 1. Google Maps recently launched voice guidance with
And
its
I'm going to
platform.
touch.
A. What is it and 3. Research way map.
When it starts reading, if you want to interrupt the speech, you can just touch anywhere on the screen. I tend to touch in the middle, which is where that document area is, because I don't want to accidentally activate the keyboard or something and then have to get back to the contents. Getting in that contents field can be tricky for some of our students. They always seem to land somewhere in these formatting things, so like indentation and centering and things like that. So they can swipe to the right from there. If they land in the keyboard, they can swipe to the left to get back to the document contents area. So when it voiced that, it started reading the contents of this doc. If you want to read the entire thing, you can just let it continue to read. I interrupted it so I could keep talking. But if you want to read from your cursor to the end of a document, we talked about taking 2 fingers and swiping down. I'll do that now, but I am going to interrupt it after it starts reading for a little bit. But if I didn't stop it, it would just keep going. So I'm taking 2 fingers, kind of like a V or a peace sign. I'm just swiping them down on the screen.
Document contents. Text field. Is editing. 3. Research way map. A. What is it and how does it work? B. How can this benefit blind or visually impaired travelers? PC. Post the link to a video that demos the
All right,
technology in
I'm
action.
interrupted.
Preferably. C. Post the link to a video that technology in action. C. Post the link to a video. Hold. Off. Button.
Okay. So that just started reading and it would go to the bottom. I'm going to go back and double tap on the contents, the document contents.
Document contents. 1. Google Maps. Insertion point at start.
Okay, and you heard it say insertion point at start. If I double tap again,
Insertion point at end.
insertion point at end. This is really important. It seems that sometimes our students, they'll be, I don't know, like in Google Classroom getting a question, then they'll go to the textbook and they'll get the information for that, and then they'll come to their doc where they're going to write their answer. And when it opens up the doc, they just sort of start writing or dictating wherever their cursor lands when that document opens. And this is where we got into the rotor and talking about being able to navigate to specific places within a document. If you're just going to add something to the end, you can double tap until it says insertion point at end. Maybe you're going to add something at the top, insertion point at top. So that just double tapping with one finger jumps that cursor between the beginning and the end of the file. That can be handy. I'm going to go ahead and double tap and go back up to the top.
Insertion point at start.
All right, it said insertion point at start. Now, on the rotor, we have some different options for being able to move through this document. I'm going to start by using lines. So I'm taking my thumb and my forefinger and I'm twisting like I'm turning a knob to get the rotor, and I'm going to listen until it says lines.
Words.
It says words.
Lines.
There's lines. Once I've chosen that option, to move by line, I use one finger and I swipe down if I want to move to the next line, and I swipe up with one finger if I want to move to the previous line. So we're at the top of the document, so there is no previous line. So I'm going to swipe up with one finger, and you hear it goes dunk. That means I'm at the top. It lets me know I'm at that top boundary of the document. I'm now going to take one finger and I'll swipe down.
1. Google Maps recently launched voice.
And it says 1. Google Maps recently launched voice. I'm going to swipe down with one finger again to read the next line.
Guidance with its platform.
Guidance with its platform. I'm going to swipe down again with one finger.
A. What is it and how does it work?
A. What is it and how does it work? All right. So if I want to, and that moves the cursor to the end of that line. If I swipe up again.
A. What is it and how does it work?
A. What is it and how does it work? It rereads that line. If I swipe up again, I'll go up a line.
Guidance with its platform.
Guidance with its platform. So that's moving by line. I can also move by word. So I'm going to use my thumb and forefinger again. I'm going to rotate on the screen to bring up the rotor, and I'm listening for words. Now, last time I rotated to the right. This time I'm going to rotate to the left, and because I know words is on my rotor before lines. So I'm rotating.
Words.
And there's words. Just like it worked with lines, I can swipe up or down with one finger to move by word. If I swipe up, I'm going to go to the previous word.
Voice. Launched. Recently.
Each time I'm having one of those words come up and it's changing the focus, I'm swiping one time with one finger. If I swipe down with one finger, then I move one word to the right.
Recently.
Recently.
Launched.
Launched.
Voice.
Voice.
Guidance.
Guidance. Okay. So swipe up
Guidance.
to go left, swipe down to go right. I can also navigate using characters. This is super handy if you need to find the spelling of a word, something like that. So I'm going to go back to my rotor using my thumb and forefinger, doing that rotating like turning a knob.
Lines.
Okay, it said lines.
Speaking rate. 70%.
Speaking rate.
Headings.
Headings.
Braille screen input.
Braille screen
Landscape.
input.
Screen away
Remember,
mode.
you
Contracted.
might have different things on your rotor than I do.
Text portrait. Typing mode. Touch typing. Edit. Characters.
Characters. There we go. I got to characters. Now, swiping down, we'll read to the right or the next character. Swiping up, we'll go to the previous or to the left character. So I'm going to swipe down.
G. U. I. D. A. N. C. B.
Okay,
Echo.
each time it read a letter, I was swiping down and it was moving one letter at a time. You may have noticed after it said E, it said echo. I wasn't pausing between my swipes, but it would have given the phonetic equivalent for each of the letters. I swiped before it said it. So for example, I'll swipe back up. So we have
E, echo,
E, echo,
C, Charlie,
C, Charlie,
N, November,
N, November. So sometimes, especially if you're working in like a loud environment, a B and a D might sound similar. And so having it say Bravo or Delta, that can be handy. You can turn that off in settings. I just happen to have it on. All right, so when I was moving back through the word,
A,
I'm
Alpha,
on the A now,
D,
the D,
Delta, I,
the I,
India.
I'm swiping up. So anytime you want to go toward the top of the document, to the left, to the previous, however you want to think of it, you're swiping up with one finger. Anytime you're going toward the bottom of the document, moving your cursor to the right, or going to the next item, then you're swiping down. All right, so I'm gonna switch back to words for just a second because I want my cursor in a specific place for demonstrating the next thing that we talked about.
Words,
Okay, on words, I'm swiping up,
U, voice,
and I'm at the beginning of voice. All right, we talked about text selection. If we want to be able to interact with a specific part of the text, we need to use text selection, which will highlight that text. So I'm, excuse me, I'm going to use my thumb and forefinger to activate the rotor by twisting, and we're listening for text selection.
lines,
Lines,
speaking rate, 70%,
speaking rate,
headings,
headings,
braille screen input,
braille screen
landscape,
input,
screen away, portrait, typing mode, touch typing, edit, characters, words, lines, speaking rate, headings, braille screen input, text selection,
I think I passed that last time. I didn't hear it. My VoiceOver is quiet when I have this screen recorder going. It has lowered its volume quite a bit. It's probably to keep from having the sound distort, and so I couldn't quite hear it. I hope you guys can hear it okay for this recording. All right, so we're on text selection. So when you think about it, every time we get into the rotor, we're doing something with this swiping up and down with one finger in order to get the options that are on the rotor option. So we're in text selection. If we swipe down or up with one finger, we're going to cycle through all the options of what we're selecting, whether that's a character, a word, the whole page. So I want to select by word. I'm going to swipe down with one finger,
word selection,
and there's words. We'll come back to words, but I'm going to go ahead and just swipe through these options so you can hear and see what the options are in text selection. So that's words.
line selection,
Swiping down once with one finger took us to line selection.
page selection,
Page selection, I'm swiping down with one finger each time.
select all,
Select all, that's a handy feature.
character selection,
Character selection,
word selection,
and here we are, we're back at word, which is what I want to do. All right, so now we're in text selection and we've chosen that we're going to select by word. Now we have to let VoiceOver know what we want to select. I positioned my cursor at the beginning of the word voice. If I swipe to the left, it will select the words before voice, one word at a time. Each time I swipe, it'll pick up another word. If I swipe to the right, then it'll start selecting one word at a time to the right of the cursor. I want to select the words voice guidance. So I'm going to swipe once to the right,
voice selected,
and it said voice selected. I'm going to swipe again to the right,
guidance selected,
and now guidance is also selected. So they're highlighted on the screen. Let's suppose I'm going to swipe one more time to the right.
width selected,
All right, and now width is also selected. And then I'm like, oh wait, I didn't want to select width. So to unselect, I just swipe back to the left.
with unselected,
And now it's unselected. All right, so I could have been selecting by line, word, character. I just used Word as the demo. I'm going to go ahead and show what we did next is we worked on copying text and pasting it. So copy, and we could do all kinds of things with this text now that it's selected. We could delete it, we could italicize it, we could bold it. If we had selected a whole line, we could center it. So all those formatting and attribute type options, once we have the text selected, we can do that. But I want to show you how you would copy it because that's what we did in our training. So on the rotor, there is an option that's called Edit, and that's where the copy, cut, and paste options live. So I'm going to do my rotor again with my thumb and forefinger. I'm twisting, and we're listening for Edit.
Typing mode. Touch typing.
Okay, typing mode.
Edit.
Edit. There it is. Now, just like every other option on the rotor, once we get where we're to the option we want, to get the choices within that option, we have to swipe up or down with one finger. I'm going to swipe down and we're listening for copy.
Paste.
Okay, it says paste. I'm going to swipe down again with one finger.
Undo.
Undo. We don't want that.
Redo.
Redo. We don't want that.
Scan text.
Scan text. We don't want that.
Copy.
There it is. Copy. Okay. Now, some of you were concerned in the training because copy didn't stay on your screen. You saw the word copy, you heard it, and then it went away. It's still in VoiceOver's focus, even if you can't see that as an option on your screen anymore. So if you activate now by double tapping, it's going to copy the text. You can double tap anywhere on the screen, which is what I'm going to do. We're double tapping with one finger.
Copied selection to clipboard.
All right, and it says copy selection to clipboard. I want to mention that depending on what application you're in, you might get a different kind of feedback at this copy mode. In Google, it just says copied selection to clipboard. In other applications, for example, if you're in your email client, when you have text selected and you copy it, it will read the text to you and say copy to clipboard. So it would have said voice guidance copy to clipboard. So the one thing to keep in mind, if you've got students working in Google, when it deletes something or copies something or pastes it, it doesn't read what it deleted or what it copied. It just says selection. And sometimes it can be a little disorienting because you're like, wait, did I delete that whole thing or what went away? So it's just something to be aware of. So now we have this copied to our clipboard and we can go anywhere where we can edit text and paste this somewhere else. So we could take it somewhere else in this document. We could go to another document. We could go to an email, a text message, a search field on a web page, and we can paste. So let's see, what do we want to do? We'll go to Google and we'll paste it there. So I could go back to my home page and pull up my browser. I'm going to go ahead and just use Siri, and I'm not sure if this will come over the microphone, but what I'm going to say is open google.com. All right, and here we are in Chrome, and I know where the search bar is because I use it so often, but I touched about an inch down below the top of my screen. Your students might swipe to get there. It's near the top of the screen, so they won't have to swipe too far. All right. I was already in the field, but I double tapped with one finger just to have the confidence that I was in the field like I thought it was. And it said insertion point at end. There is nothing in here, so if I tapped it again, it would say at insertion point at the beginning, but it's the same place. All right, so just like copy lived in the edit menu, paste lives in the edit menu. So of the rotor. So I'm going to use my thumb and forefinger. I'm twisting till we get to edit.
Misspelled words. Characters. Words. Speaking rate. 70%. Headings. Zero. Rail screen input. Landscape portrait. Typing mode. Touch typing. Edit.
There's edit. You'll notice there's different options on the rotor that we didn't have on the Google. So your rotor options change depending on where you are. So there's things that I can access on a web page that those features aren't available in Docs. So you'll find your rotor changes depending on where you are. All right, so it said edit. I'm going to swipe down with one finger and we're trying to find paste.
Select all.
We have select all,
Scan text.
scan text,
Paste.
paste. There it is. So then I just double tap with one finger
Chrome pasted from docs.
and it said Chrome pasted from Docs. So it's telling me what I had copied from Docs has now been pasted into Chrome. All right,
Voice guidance job rep. Voice guidance Samsung.
I know that my application, I know my file, the assignment had to do with maps. So I'm looking in these search pop-ups to see
Google Maps.
if there is a voice guidance with maps, and there is. It just said that, so I'm gonna double tap to activate that.
Back. Search. Landmark. Main menu. Pop-up button. Menu. Search results. Heading level 1. Featured snippet from the web. Tap settings. December 2nd, 2020. Scroll down and tap the detailed voice guidance toggle to switch it to the
All right, and I can actually open these web pages, but I'm gonna just I'm gonna select.
Tap your account icon in the top right. 2. Open the Google Maps app on your mobile device. 1. List start. To enable voice guidance for Google Maps.
I'm gonna go ahead and copy these steps, and of course, I wouldn't generally encourage my students to just copy directly from a web page, but they might need this list to refer to for enabling voice guidance. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this. So I have to tell VoiceOver what I want to copy, remember? So I go back to, yep, you're right, we're going to text selection. So I'm going to use my rotor, my thumb and forefinger to get to text selection.
Characters. Words. Lines. Speaking rate. 70%. Headings. Links. Font controls. Visited links.
You can tell there's a lot more options on my web browser rotor.
Text fields. Zero text. Search fields. Rail screen input. Portrait.
I should have turned the other way, huh?
Edit. Characters. Words. Lines. Speaking rate. 70. Headings. Links. Font controls. Visited links. Text fields. Zero text. Search fields. Rail screen input. Text selection.
There it is, text selection. I swear it didn't read that the last time we went around, but here it is. Yay! All right, this is a long passage that I'm going to select. So instead of selecting by word, I'm going to select by lines. So to choose lines, I have to use an up or down, swiping with one finger. I'm going to swipe down. I think I'm on words, so lines should be the next. Let's see.
Line selection.
There it is. All right, and then I want to start selecting to the right of my cursor because I put my cursor at the beginning of the word to, T-O. So I'm going to start swiping to the right.
To enable voice guidance for Google Maps. Selected.
That's the first line. I'm going to swipe again to the right.
Open the Google Maps app on your mobile device. Selected.
There's the next one.
Tap your account icon in the top right
I'm
corner.
going to keep
Selected.
going.
Tap settings.
Each time I swipe to the right, it picks up another line.
Scroll down and tap navigation settings. Selected. Scroll down and tap the detailed voice guidance. Selected. Toggle to switch it to the on position. Selected. December 2nd, 2020. Selected.
Okay, now I don't really care about that date so much. I just want the steps. So to unselect that date, I'm going to swipe left.
December 2nd, 2020. Unselected.
All right, there we go. So now I have these steps for enabling voice guidance highlighted on my screen. I want to take this back to my doc. So I have to, that's right, copy, which is in the edit menu. I'm giving you a chance to think before I say it. That's why I'm pausing. All right, let me use my rotor. So I use my thumb and forefinger and I'm twisting. until we get to edit. And there it is. It was the first one. All right. Then I need copy, which I can get to that option by swiping down with one finger. Share. I don't want that. Copy. There it is. I double tap with one finger.
To enable voice guidance for Google Maps, open the Google Maps app on your mobile device. Tap your account icon in the top right corner. Tap Settings. Scroll down and tap Navigation Settings. Scroll down and tap the detailed voice guidance toggle to switch it to the on position. Copied.
Okay, so it read that whole selected text and then it said copied. If you remember in Google Docs, it just said selection copied. So that's what I was telling you, it's different. I could have interrupted that speech partway through. I didn't have to listen to all of it. I could have interrupted it. All right, I need to get back to Docs. If you're on an iPad, you can take 3 fingers and swipe to the right to go between your open applications. To get back to your doc, I'm just going to use my Siri.
Document contents. 1. Google Maps recent.
All right, here I am back in my document.
C. Post a link to a video that demos the
I'm going to use my rotor to get to
words.
lines, and I'm going to scroll up. So I'm swiping up with 1.
Voice guidance unselected.
Oh, that unselected what I had selected. So that's actually a good thing because otherwise when I went to write something, I would have just typed over it.
Guidance with its platform.
I'm swiping down now. I'm moving my cursor down.
What is it and how does it work?
Okay, what is it and how does it work? I want to make sure I'm after the question mark. So I'm going to actually go back to characters.
Words. Characters.
So I did that by my rotor, just twisting my rotor until it said character. And now I'm going to swipe up.
Question mark.
There is my question mark. That's what I wanted. So I'm going to swipe down to get past it again.
Question mark.
And I'm going to hit enter or return. Enter, that shows how old I am. Okay, so I'm on a new line. So I could just type here if I'm going to answer. I could say voice.
O. O. U. A. U. I. I. C. 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 W. B. B. Space. Space. G. 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 Y. U. U. I. I. D. 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 Shift. A. 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 F. F.
It's a little laggy, maybe because of the voice recording.
X. C. C. B. B. Space. Space. Guidance.
Okay, so that's me just typing. Voice guidance is blah, 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 blah. I did show you in the training down in this bottom right of the keyboard, there's a little microphone. If you touch that,
Dictate button.
it'll say dictate button. If I actually did that right now to dictate, it would steal the microphone from the voice recording. I mean the screen recording, because it would be using it for dictation. But if I activate that, it'll make a beep. Then I could speak. When I'm done dictating, I can double tap with 2 fingers, and then it would insert what I dictated. We talked about how that's not always super accurate, but it can be a faster way. So you won't be able to hear me for a second, but I'll go ahead and do this dictation just to demonstrate how this works.
Dictate button. It is a feature in Google Maps that allows visually impaired travelers to understand their walking routes. Period. Period.
Okay, so it inserted what I said. It did a pretty good job, actually. And it then it read to me what it inserted. If it made errors, then I could go back and use my rotor and move back and fix that. Our students tend to just move on, but you should double check your dictation all the time. All right, I'm going to go to the next line. I would write more than this if I was answering this question. But remember, we have those steps on our clipboard that we got from Google, and now I want to paste those in here. So think about where paste is on the rotor. It's in the edit menu. So I'm going to navigate to the edit menu.
Words.
There's words,
Lines.
lines,
Speaking rate.
speaking rate.
Headings. Rail screen input. Text selection. Typing mode. Touch typing.
There's edit. And I'm going to swipe down with one finger until I hear paste.
Paste.
There it is. It's the first option right now. I'm going to double tap with one finger.
Paste it to enable voice guidance for Google Maps. Open the Google Maps app on your mobile device. Tap your account icon in the
All right.
Tap settings.
And now it
Tap navigation.
has,
Scroll down and tap the detailed voice guidance toggle to switch it. Delete. Return. New line.
it has, I went ahead and interrupted it and put a line return up, went to the next line at the end of it. So now it inserted that text. It pasted it from Google. So that reviews what we did with copy and pasting. I'm trying to think of some of the other things we did. Oh, the one that you guys really liked was with 3 fingers. If I tap the screen 3 times,
Screen curtain on.
that turns the screen curtain on. You can't see anything. To undo that, do the same thing. So 3 fingers, tap 3 times.
Screen curtain off.
And there it is, the screen curtain's off. And then we also talked about double tapping. So 2 times tapping with 3 fingers will turn the speech off.
Speech off.
And we talked about, so if you have this was troubleshooting, like if you have a VoiceOver's on, but you're just getting a lot of clicking noise, it's possible that the speech has been turned off. So to turn that back on, it's 3 fingers and tap twice.
Speech on.
So that's just a toggle that goes back and forth. So I know that's a lot. This got long. If you're still listening, bravo! You are super committed. And I hope this helps. And let me know if there's any other areas that you want me to cover. I'm happy to do these screen recordings. My students can also use them. So it's just, I can build a little library of these. All right, now I have to figure out how to stop screen recording. This is actually the first time I've done a screen recording. Hope it worked.
Control center.
So I'm bringing up my control center.
Brightness. 100. Volume. Selected. Focus. Flashlight. Camera. Button. Selected. Screen recording.
See, I don't know this screen as well. I couldn't just touch right on it. Okay, I think if I tap here, I'm gonna go away. So thank you. Bye.